Alright, so this is where we are. So we finished modeling the entire scene, and in this lesson we will look at how to shade the exhaust of the bus in Octane. And what I'll also do is I will also do a little bit of additional lighting to just bring the whole scene to look a little better. Alright, so one of the things I have done with the exhaust is the same thing that we have in our cloud, which is this volume warp, which allows us to fade it in a particular direction. I have added that to the exhaust because what I wanted was I don't want it to be this heavy at the base. So the idea was to sort of just fade it out in the y-axis, so you can control how much density it should have towards the base. So the point is, it just gives you a little bit of additional control. Rather than trying to do it in the simulation, if you want some additional control during final rendering, this is quite useful. So let's get started. What I'm going to do is I'll come into the shopnet, and I have this one material which I built for the exhaust because I was testing out the scene. This is the scene so far, this is where we are. So what I want to do is I'm going to take the cloud material and I will duplicate it. And let's just call it exhaust. I'm going to delete, or let's just call this old. Yeah. So we'll call this exhaust. And I'll just assign it to this fellow. Okay, so I've done a couple of things here. Actually, just one thing, which is you add the Octane object parameters, and the same as the fog, change the emission grid to density, because we don't really have any temperature or heat or anything in there. So we're just going to shade it the way it's shaded in the viewport. Alright, so let's do a basic render, and we'll see what we have, and then we'll continue from there. So yeah, now as I had said before, I'm just saying it again, just make sure that all your volumes are kept as volumes and not as VDB. Because if you have VDB, it will take longer to calculate. Okay, let's do one. So one thing that I have done here is I moved the big cloud on the right further out to the right, because what was happening was that it was blocking the bus and you weren't getting it wasn't looking very nice. It was getting in the way and the bus wasn't getting highlighted. So I just moved it to the side so the sky remains open. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off both these clouds so that we get it'll render in a shorter time. Now, right now you can't see the exhaust because our density is too low. It's using the same shader that we built for the cloud. So it is there, but it's just really, really low. Okay, so what I can do is I can come into exhaust, and let's do one thing. Let's get rid of both these things. And I'm going to bring the step length down to 1. Okay, so you'll be able to see it, and get the density up to about 8. And that's what you'll get. Let's keep it at 10 for now, and then we'll adjust it later. Yeah, so just to show you the difference, if I come into the exhaust and I just go to the base volume that I have, and let's do a snapshot of this. So if I reload that, just to show you the difference, what it is before and after the fade. Yeah, so there you go. So if you look at it, this is what it is originally. So it's extremely dense, and because of that you can't really see this guy at all. So what will happen is, if you try to lower the density overall, everything will disappear. So what we want is, we want this density to remain, and then at the ground level it should fade out. So this gives us more control. Okay, so let me just get it back here. I want to fade it out a little bit more. So I'm just going to take this and push it a little bit towards the right. Okay, and then let's hit a reload again. Yeah, there you go. So that's better. Okay, so it's not very complicated. What we need to do is let's get rid of the absorption. We don't need that. I'll bring in the scattering ramp because it gives us, it makes it a little bit sort of orangish, because so the scattering always works in the opposite direction. So if you take blue here, then the cloud becomes orangish. That's how you do it. But what it allows is, it feels like the light from the sun in the background is sort of filtering through, so it looks nicer. And then if you increase it, if you increase the max value, it will fade out more. If you lower it, it will become more dense. So we'll keep it somewhere around 0.3 or 0.5. Yeah, 0.5 is fine. Alright, so the second thing is we're going to take another volume ramp. This will be for emission, and we will take an emission texture. So plug in the emission, which will be like ridiculously bright, and then connect the emission ramp. It will come down almost immediately, and change this to blue. We'll add in another point and make it darker. And what you can do additionally is we can just adjust the max value. Like if you make it lower, it will get brighter, and if you make it higher, then it will get darker. Yeah, so this is essentially it. Okay, so this is what we want to do with the exhaust. Now if you don't want it to affect lighting, you can turn off visible on diffuse, because this is technically a light, but we want it because it will light up a little bit, it will look nice. Like if you increase it, you will see. Okay, so this is as far as the exhaust is concerned, right? So I'll just try and adjust it a little bit more. Yeah, there you go. I think that's better. Yeah, so now it's bluish. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, now that we have the basic thing done, is I want to light up the bus stop so that we can highlight this guy. So what I've done is I have created two materials. So I have one material for the side wall of the bus stop, which is a glass shader. It's currently black, so that's why you can't see it. And I want another material for the tube lights on the inside. Like if you see here, we modeled these tube lights. So what I've done is, if I come into the material network, I have this one material called glass, and I have a tube light shader, which is essentially building an emission shader. So the way to build an emission shader is fairly simple. You take a diffuse material, and then you take an emission texture and connect it to the emission node. And that's all I've done. I've just given it a pink color because it just creates a nice little contrast. Not that you would have pink lights in your bus stop, but in this case it's fine. And then I have assigned them to the objects which is inside the bus stop. So if you come in here, and this is the glass, like these are the glass panels. So I've assigned the material to the glass panel, okay, which is over here. And then in the end, these are the tube lights. So I've assigned the tube light material over there. So just to turn them on, so you can see the difference. So initially my idea was to keep another light, behind this fellow, so he's easier to see. But I kind of realized like just having the tube lights was good enough. So let me just do a snapshot of this. And then if I just come into the material network, so the first thing is I'll just get the glass, and we'll get the transmission color to white. And see, so you'll have this. I've given it a little bit of roughness, right? So default is that. Okay, but I just gave it like a slight bit of roughness, and I'm going to make it slightly pink. Now, I think the reason that the glass on the other side is looking black is because our ray depth is a little low. So what you need to do is we need to come into ShopNet, take the render node, go to path tracing. And yeah, our specular depth is at 3. So let's make it 6. And see, there you go. Now we can see through the glass. Okay, so then we'll come back again and come to the glass. And I want to blur it a little bit, but we'll blur it after we turn on the tube lights. So we'll come into the tube lights. And all I'm going to do is take the power and bring it up. And there you go. So what this will do is, see, it very nicely highlights this little fellow over there, because that was the problem, like you couldn't see him before. And now I can take the glass and just make it about 0.4. So it sort of, blurs out, it looks a little better. Yeah, so this is basically it. Like it's not, particularly complicated. All you need to do is to figure out, how to highlight the central character, but that's a fairly artistic thing. So, go whichever way you feel like. All right, now as a final thing, let's also take care of the dust particles. So what I'll do is I'll create a snapshot of this, and I'm going to hide the exhaust, and we'll bring in the dust particles. And this already has a p-scale. right? Like if I come in here and if I check it, you'll find that it has somewhere, yeah, there you go, it has p-scale. And what we can do is we will apply the Octane object parameters, come to particles and turn it on. And I'm going to, like, I think this is going to be slightly big. So what we'll do is, for now, we'll get the radius, overall radius to about 0.5 and give it the same material. So we have material net basic. Yeah, we'll just give it the same material. Now, also do one more thing, which is come into the ROPNet, select the Octane render node, and we need to turn on motion blur. So we're going to come in here and we'll turn on motion blur for the particles. And also, okay, let's render this and then I'll make the other adjustments, because I think the shutter time might be too high, but let's just render this. So I'll save the file. Yeah, there we go. So if I zoom in a bit, yeah, see, we are getting a little bit of motion blur on this. Now, I think it's still too big, so let's just lower the size of them. So we'll take the Vellum and Octane. Let's bring this down even further and let's hit reload. Wow, that's too low. Okay, let's go to 0.25. I think 0.25 should be fine. And you are getting a little bit of motion blur on it. Let's do one thing. Let's just give it a slightly darker shader. So I'll just take this, we'll do Control C, Control V. We'll call it dark. Let's lower this a fair bit. Make it slightly brownish if you want. And we can assign it to the dust particles. So yeah, there you go. That, stands out a little bit more. Yeah, and you can see the, the motion blur on it. If you want to increase the motion blur, what you can do is you can come into the camera and you can try to increase the shutter time. Like that also helps. So if I get this slightly higher to, let's say, 0.7, yeah, see, so now it's, a little more streakier than before. All right, so let's just bring in the, exhaust again and we'll see what we have. Or let's do one thing, let's just bring in everything. But before that, I want to just change the camera to 720. So let's make it HD 720 and I might need to adjust it. So just zoom out a bit. Okay, let's just bring in the clouds so we can see where we are. Okay, let me save this and we'll do a render. So now if you want to see a full render, because the Octane IPR window is usually small. So what we can do is, in order to get like a full render, I can change the IPR. So we can come into IPR and change it to mplay and change this to camera. So you can get like the full resolution. So if we hit IPR now, this is going to open up the mplay. Yeah, so this looks pretty decent. Okay, so what we can also do is we can come into the camera and we can just take the f-stop to about 16, because it's supposed to be like a landscape shot. So you don't want it to be, out of focus. But there you go. Oh yeah, hold on. I forgot to bring in the exhaust. So where's the exhaust? Yeah, so come to exhaust and hit. Yeah, I think we'll have to close it and start it again. I don't know how to reload this. Yeah, with the IPR, I usually know there's like a reload button, but I'm not sure about that over here. Okay. I think you get an additional shelf for Octane IPR. Yeah, so when you're doing the mplay IPR, then you can do it from here. But anyway, so let's just, turn it on again so we can see it. Yeah, so I'll just let it render through and I'll come back after that. All right, so this is the final result. Okay, except for making the shader for the landscape. So which is what we'll take a look at in the next lesson. So this is about 500 samples. It took about 5 minutes to render on 2 GPUs. The rest of the shaders for the bus and everything else, I'll leave it up to you, because I didn't do very complex shaders to begin with. So you can always, you can use your own discretion and see what works. So in the next lesson, we'll take a look at how to build the shader for the terrain, and that's basically it.